I will call the select board meeting of 1/19/21 to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, select board chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah.
Here.
Brian Herr. Mary Jo Lafreniere.
Here.
Amy Ritterbush.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Norman Kamalu.
Here.
Elaine Lazarus.
Here.
Additional speakers this evening may include Sean McAuliffe, Don Alcott Miller, Finn Perry, and Gary Trundell. Before we go further, I would like to make a statement about the events of January 6th, 2021. This is a statement I created with input from our Vice Chair, Irfan Nasrullah, with the option for the rest of the board members to put their input in. In Hopkinton, our town government is based on democracy in its purest form. When our town officials had a concern about a single ballot in a local election, the matter was brought to court for resolution, and the town followed the ruling of the court. This is how a democracy is supposed to work. We have well-established means for resolving disputes peacefully, and we use them. The alternative, the use of violence and physical force, is unacceptable. For this reason, the Select Board would like to condemn the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. This is not just something that happens in a far away and remote level of government. It matters in Hopkinton. Our work is to build a safe and welcoming community. The destruction of public property, looting, vandalism, and taking human life are anti-ethical to our goals. Over the years, we have sponsored, celebrated, and respected the results of secure elections based on a multi-system party. Any attempt to deploy mob rule to undo the results of Hopkinton's legitimate and fair election is an attack on the core of our democracy. Our political opponents are not our enemies. They are our neighbors. Verbal attacks on individuals who hold different political views, especially attacks that are designed to incite violence, undermine our community. We pledge ourselves to do what we can to protect life and end violence in our political discourse. There is a mechanism in place to resolve disputes, and the mechanism worked when the results of the election was challenged. The mere allegation of fraud is not enough to reject votes. The allegation must be presented with evidence in a court of law. Again, the mechanism to resolve disputes was deployed in the court, and court after court dismissed the allegations because they were brought without credible evidence. We know there are people who are deeply disappointed with the results of the election, just as there were many disappointed with the results of the 2016 election and every election prior. However, if our democracy is to continue to succeed, we as Americans and as residents of Hopkinton must respect the system, respect the results, and have civil discourse over the issues we face. Violence has no place in the rule of our law, our town, our democracy, and our America. If there's anybody attending who would like to speak during the public forum of the agenda, you must notify the meeting host in advance. You may do so by using the raise hand feature of Zoom. This open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we're complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar, as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda. The public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For the public forum portion of the agenda, the chair will work with the meeting host to call on each pre-registered speaker to make their comment. Each speaker must begin by identifying their name and address. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes for their comments. Please use the raise hand feature of the Zoom now to indicate you'd like to make a comment. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And Mr. Herr, I see that you're with us now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see. Participants. Doesn't look like we have any public forum people. So good. So if there's anyone in the public wishes to speak, use the raise hand feature of Zoom. When called, identify yourself. I don't see anybody that has used the raised hand, so we are off the public forum. COVID-19 update. Sean McAuliffe, Public Health Director, will provide an update on the town's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. McAuliffe. There he is. He's on mute.
There we go.
All right, Sean.
All right. So just wanted to thank you for having me tonight. So briefly, we're coming off one of the worst, or what I hope to be one of the worst 2 weeks of the pandemic in Hopkinton. We're up to 535 cases. We've had 172 cases in the last month. On a positive note, we're trending back downward. We've had 22 cases over the last week. Last week our positivity rate hit a high of 5.95. And all of this is really attributed to the fact that we weren't doing enough to reduce our exposure. Through our traceback activities, we've traced the majority of these cases, or this surge in cases, back to family gatherings, some limited office type parties, travel by air, car, and train, and to a lesser extent, a bit of work and some sporting activities. But when I looked at the travel documentation for the last, actually it was from Thanksgiving to the week prior to New Year's, we had 635 residents document that they had traveled. So I guess the message I'm trying to say is if the federal, state, and local government officials are saying that travel is bad and we need to be really reducing our personal exposure, we can't be surprised by the results that we have. And that said, recovering and pulling ourselves back and getting us, into a yellow risk rating or even a green is easily within our grasp. It's just face covering, distancing, staying home when we're ill, reducing our personal exposures. So, someone said, well, that means we're going to jeopardize our restaurants. I said, no, we can go to our restaurants. We can support all of our local businesses, but we just need to do, takeout, have something available on curbside. And if we buckle down and focus on, these, really four basic elements to risk reduction, we're going to be in a much better place in the weeks to come. And I think we're already seeing it. And I would argue that, this is the list of people that we contacted over the weekend. So, I must have spoken to over 100 residents this weekend, and everybody that I spoke to agrees that, there is a need to just tighten up, to reduce our exposures, and I have a commitment there, and I'm just asking, the residents in Hopkinton just to make a similar commitment to reducing their exposure so we can get back down and reduce our positivity rate, and then reduce the risk to all of the other residents in Hopkinton of contracting the illness. That said, I wanted to take a moment to recognize Julia McDonald. She's one of the college students that we brought on to assist with contact tracing. She's doing this, basically in her spare time, and the effort that she has put in has been incredible. And then the work that our other two nurses have put in has also been pretty spectacular. It's really helped Casey and I be able to focus on this next phase, which is, vaccination. So that said, we're moving into this vaccination stage. Golden Pond has received their first dose. Our first responders have been vaccinated, and we're working with the state to figure out what is the timeline on their delivery of vaccine to us so that we can embark on phase 2 vaccination. Right now, I don't have a schedule on when they're going to deliver vaccine to us. I wish I did. Casey and I both contacted the state, and then through the call we had with the state at 3:00 today, it became clear that their focus right now is getting all of the phase 1 groups taken care of, and they want to make sure that they have enough vaccine in reserve to provide the second doses to all of those who have received them. Once that is done, they should start providing vaccine to the health department so that we can start filling in the gaps and start providing, vaccine to the seniors that are calling, to the schools, and any other groups that are identified in phase 2. I have a meeting, a very small meeting, several health directors in the region and the deputy commissioner of the Department of Public Health to discuss this matter. That's on the 28th. And I hope to have a lot more information coming out of that meeting as to where we're at. That said, Casey and I are ready. We have our plan. We could mobilize 8 staff tomorrow to jump in and work with us. And we would have another at least 8 from the fire department to assist. But again, all of these plans are dependent on us getting vaccine in hand. So that said, all I'm asking is that we all be patient. Also asking, there's no list at the health department. There's no, calling the health department at this point isn't going to provide you a better spot. The system that we'll be rolling out and managing vaccines with, we will be providing those links to people, and then they will enter in their information. So, like I said, just contacting us, there's really nothing I can do. There's nothing that I can offer. And again, all I can ask is that people just be patient. I have seen the state's greater plan at the moment, they intend to open up 5 large mass vaccination sites across the Commonwealth, similar to the one that just opened at Gillette. The plan does call for one to be local to Hopkinton. They just haven't confirmed that and don't want us to speak to it. Then in support of those 5 mass vaccination sites, there will be these large pharmacy operated sites, between 10 and 20 of those. That's the current thought. Those will be dispersed around the Commonwealth. There'll be 18 hospitals providing vaccinations. There'll be, at that point, they'll start putting out vaccine to health departments, pediatricians' offices, some dental offices. And then the thought is that we can all support these larger mass vaccine distribution centers. And that said, and we're also anxiously awaiting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, because that is the one vaccine that only requires one dose. All of these others are a 2-dose, or it's a dose and a booster shot. And that's one of the things that the state is also doing, is they want to make sure that everybody that's received their first shot gets that booster. Until I hear more, that's really all I can offer related to the vaccines. And again, just to close out, we just need to really make sure that we're focusing on reducing our exposure, and we want to do everything we can to help, again, bridge that time between today and when we get vaccinated, so that we don't contract COVID in the meantime. And if we do everything that we're advising, I think we'll be in a much better place in a week. So, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I've actually had a couple of questions from townspeople presented to me. And to be clear, and I can only speak for CVS. If CVS is the person that's administering the vaccine, they won't be having any town staff doing the injection. The staff that you speak about, that you have 8 staff that are ready to go, that'll be support staff for the CVS people, assuming you have CVS. I don't know how the other people work, but I did run a COVID clinic on Friday at my facility. We started at 10 o'clock. We ended at 4, and we vaccinated more than a couple of hundred people. But it was, we generally had I kept a 5-to-1 ratio of my staff to the CVS staff or the inoculating staff. And it went very, very well. So if you have any questions, or if you want to pick my brain on anything like that, feel free to give me a shout. I also was one of the people that was vaccinated. So it went surprisingly well. CVS, those people were surprisingly amenable to suggestions, workflow, command center, et cetera. But just to be clear, it's, you and Casey aren't the ones that are going to be giving the vaccine. So
no.
But thank you very much for all your work. You're doing a great job. And board members, anything else?
Yeah. So I have one question. As far as, when we're looking at phase 2, it seems to be prioritized people with 2 comorbidities over age 75. How is that actually going to work? Do people need to get a note from their doctor, or is that still unknown at this point?
They're still working on redefining it. And what I've heard is right now, it may just be everybody over the age of 65. And then but with a focus on these key subgroups, as like Norman and I have had discussions of, there's subpopulations that we really need to focus on. So those would be our focus. So it's those that are most at risk, those that are most in need, we'll say, and then we can focus on those that are most vulnerable from comorbidities. But it becomes one of the things that I think the state's just not been clear on how, as this plan is rolled out, what kind of direction they're going to provide us, because this is a situation where I'm kind of damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I focus on the residents of, the senior housing community, then I'm going to probably get a lot of backlash from others that are, in another group. And right now, we're not in the driver's seat. So we're just waiting for this guidance. And the chief and I have discussed this a lot, almost daily. And what we believe is that by the time we get to this phase 2 period, they will have stood up all of these other facilities, so that all of the focus won't be on the health departments delivering service. It'll be, we can send people to these other mass vaccination facilities that are handling 7,000 or more a day. We'll be able to send them to, maybe their pediatrician, maybe CVS is standing up other clinics in the region, but it's, the call that the chief and I had 2 weeks ago, they didn't even mention the health department. We were that far back on their list. Today, it was discussed, and to health departments like ours, their message to us was, we hear you, we know you're ready. We're just asking for your patience as they sort out allocation and they put a better schedule together.
Thank you, Sean. I know it's frustrating not having the answers and constantly being asked, but thank you for everything you're doing. And I know you're doing a great job, and let's just hope that we get some more guidance soon.
Yeah,
Good.
It's coming. So
Good. Well, thank you very much. Sean, keep on keeping on. Moving on to the consent agenda. The board will consider approving the consent agenda, considering of the approval of minutes of the select board meeting on January 5. I will request a motion to approve the consent agenda consent agenda.
So moved.
Anyone want to second that?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Frenier, yes.
Ritterbusch?
Ritterbusch, yes.
Redstone, yes. Youth and Family Services Strategic Plan. The board will hear a presentation on the 2020 to 2023 Strategic Plan for the Youth and Family Services Department by Dawn Alcott Miller, Director. Ms. Alcott Miller, the floor is yours. And looks like you're there. There you are.
Oh, it's very nice to be with you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very excited to share with you a very brief synopsis of our strategic plan. Ben is just pulling up the slides. Thank you, Ben. So in this strategic plan, I just want to thank Colleen Souza, who's the social worker in the department with me, and our intern, Renee Cooprider, who put in just a ton of work along with our consultant, Ann Budner. And for the residents who started this department out of their passion for youth and for our town manager and the select board who eventually saw this program through. I have come into a program that receives a lot of community support, and I'm very grateful. And so we hope this plan is satisfying to the community as well. We endeavored to do a very deep community needs assessment. You can read, so I know that you've seen this data, and I'm not going to read it all to you. But as concerning as the data is, I want you to know that Hopkinton does a lot right, because in particular with our Metro West Adolescent Health Youth Survey data, it's much worse in surrounding communities. And as concerning as it is to see some of these statistics, Hopkinton's doing a lot right to have the statistics they do have, but there's tremendous room for improvement to improve the emotional well-being of young people and of residents in general, and to reduce stigma. Next slide, please. So the critical strategic issues that came out of our plan were that we can't succeed by ourselves as a department. Hopkinton Youth and Family Services can't do this alone, that community members are not entirely clear on our purpose and how to access services, how we differ from the Department of Social Services in Boston or, around, and what our purpose is. Are we here to take away their children or to penalize them in some way? We've learned that it's challenging to be different in Hopkinton. With its current resources, Hopkinton Youth and Family Services will be unable to meet the community's demands, and that COVID-19 has created a critical situation with pressure building in every aspect of community life. Next slide, please. And so here we have this tremendous service network. There's so many great things going on, and only community-wide solutions can solve community-wide problems. The department's collaborative approach to behavioral health builds on the strengths, skills, and enthusiasm of Hopkinton's network of service providers. But as you can see, they're pretty tangled. And so to access those services when you're in a critical state or when you need help can be really complicated and quite confusing. And so we're hoping to help untangle that a little bit and provide a straighter line for residents to understand how to access services when they most need care. Next slide, please. And so our mission is to provide access to comprehensive social services for youth and families and to enhance behavioral health for the entire Hopkinton community. And our vision is that Hopkinton will be a town in which all people are valued, where behavioral health is a high priority and residents have a place to turn when they need help. Next slide, please. We are leaders in behavioral health. We're champions of behavioral health prevention and education. We're advocates for underserved residents. We're adaptable and collaborative. And we believe it's okay to not be okay. That access to mental health care and substance abuse treatment and recovery should be easy to navigate, stigma-free, and open to all. And that if one of us is not okay, then none of us are okay. And that vulnerability can reflect many different barriers in a resident's life and are not always visible on the surface. And that the whole environment around people affects their mental health and wellness. Next slide, please. So out of all of this, we've come up with 4 goals, and our leading 4 goals over the next 3 years are to help to strengthen and clarify the network of services that acts as a safety net for vulnerable residents. And again, with that thinking that vulnerable can mean many different things in someone's life, and provide primary prevention services to build a healthy community culture. Hopefully one day we'll work ourselves out of a job and we'll prevent the things that cause a lot of people to suffer. And then increase community awareness of behavioral health issues, of Hopkinton Youth and Family Services mission and services, and how to access help. And develop effective and efficient funding, staffing, and processes. So that concludes the slide deck. And there's a deeper presentation we'd like to invite the community to down the road. We'd be very happy to invite you as well to a longer presentation that goes more in depth, but for the purposes this evening and to respect your time. That concludes things on my end. I was wondering if you had any feedback or questions. And also, I would ask for your support of the department moving forward and of this plan and socializing this plan to the community.
Thank you, Don. That was a great presentation. We appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate all the hard work that you and Colleen are doing. And I spoke to Ms. Cooprider at length. I was interviewed for one of her surveys, and she was very passionate, very knowledgeable about the subject matter. So you're doing a great job, and I will speak for our community and say thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Board members, anyone have anything? Mr. Nasrullah?
Yeah, real quick, I just want to echo what Mr. Tedstone said, Don. Really appreciate everything you're doing. One thing that kind of jumped out at me was when you said that based on the current needs, current resources, you will not be able to meet the needs. Is there something that we can do to help, or is there something already in the pipeline for that?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking that. There is a proposal in the works. It has a lot of moving parts, so you can be sure I'll be back and I'll be bringing a proposal forward about ways indeed that we can be supported and have help.
Thanks. So, you have our support. I think this is, especially in this COVID time, it's critically important that people get the services that they need. And whatever we can do, I can't speak for everyone on the board, but I'm fairly certain everyone's going to be fully supportive of whatever you need.
Great, thank you, Mr. Herr.
Dawn, what kind of interaction are you having with the schools these days around all these issues?
Thank you for that question. We're in contact pretty routinely. We're actually working on projects together to try to bring more mental health awareness and training to youth and support to them. They refer to our program, and so we are getting consistent referrals from them, and they're utilizing the Interface Referral Helpline probably better than most towns who have the contract. I was on with Interface today. We had a meeting, and they spoke about the utilization and the excellent work the schools are doing and referring kids forward that they wouldn't be hearing, and that with our pediatric offices as well. They're doing a great job that way. So we're staying in good communication. It's just that there's a lot of need. So, and a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of multi-problem complex situations. And that is true for Interface as well, in a way that they are not used to either. I think our office is more used to that, but the general referrals that they're typically getting are much more intense at this time than normal.
Yeah, I can only imagine, unfortunately, the stress and strain that, the kids are feeling these days, and they're going to continue to feel, I think, for a year or two after all this winds down, whenever that is, right? We just got a report that we're not out of the woods yet. And I just really worry about the mental and emotional well-being of our kids. So, okay, thank you.
That's exactly right. One of the conversations we were having today with Interface is the long-term impact this is going to have on young people that are struggling, that it won't just go away when everyone gets vaccinated and things look like they go away, but the trauma that during this time period will stick with them, and there'll be more need for increased support of young people for the foreseeable future, for all people, really. This is the first time we're all going through it together as clinicians, in service, but we're all dealing with this together.
One of the comments I hear a lot, and I have 5 kids that are going through the schools, and some are out now, and others are still going through, and they talk to all their friends and parents and everything. There's a lot of discussion in the community about how great our schools are, and there's a lot of discussion in the community about how the schools really want to make sure we get the best damn test scores we can get and get the best college placements that we can get so that we can maintain those great schools and have that brand and that approach, if you will, out in the world. I think it's really important that we have the best schools in the state. I want the best schools in the state, but we can't sacrifice the kids' mental and emotional well-being in that quest. And I think we need to add a lot to the mental and emotional well-being of our kids. If we're going to truly be the best schools, we're going to have the best schools with the most balanced kids coming out of them. And I just hear a lot about that now, and I heard a lot about it before COVID, frankly, and I'm hearing even more about it now. I really worry about that. And we've got to, as a community, and it's not throwing the school committee under the bus or anybody, it's just as a community, we've got to make sure we protect and, in fact, build up our kids during these very difficult times. And it's going to be a couple more years on that.
And the risks with being the best, there's a cost that comes with being the best. So when you're the best, there's a lot of perfectionists in line, right? And so, and the perfectionists are the ones we worry about when it comes to having some challenges with coping. And so, yes, like everything you said, I can echo that they're concerns for us too.
Thank you.
Mary Jo?
I read the whole body of work here, including the appendix, which was just amazing. And I think that you've done a wonderful job at putting something together for us to look at. But I think that what the community needs is specific issues that they can help with. And I think, like when you get Project Just Because, and they came out just last week and said, we need this, we're running short of this. If we had specific issues every once in a while, if you have a specific issue you can come out with, then we can get, the community will get involved and volunteer more and come forward more. And I think you would get support if you bring out very specific issues continually. And that's just what I got from reading it. I said, wow, there's so much here. So to be general is great, and you have to do that. But if we could get down to real specific issues, I think you would get more of a community response. That's my only suggestion that I read. I think it's a fabulous body of work, and I really think you did a great job.
Thank you for that feedback. That's important for me to hear, and we'll figure out ways to communicate with the public to let them know how they can help us too. We have some wonderful collaborators right now. Sach has been great. The Freedom Team has been great. Like just Youth Commission has been there long term. So it's really wonderful to collaborate with the public and other departments. I can just say that I'm so thankful to be in Hopkinton and with the team of senior leaders I'm with, and how we support each other. But we'll do better at getting to the public about what our needs are too.
Thank you. Ms. Ritterbusch.
Yeah, Irfan asked the same question I had, so that's it answered. But let us know if what we can do to help budgetary wise. What else? A question I've heard from the public is, can the CARES Act money be used for any of these increases in service needs due to that are due specifically to COVID, or is that not one of the things we can use it for?
So I know Norman and I are creatively looking at that together about future applications, but we did have a support group that ran with a clinician through Mommying is Hard in response to COVID concerns. Some of the difficulty with programming is that folks are zoomed out. So they're exhausted on Zoom, and they're tuning in less and less to Zoom programming. But we're looking at ways to be more creative and to figure that out, to see how we can get some real-time help into people's hands before the next budgetary cycle, if we can.
That sounds good. And I would encourage the public to take a look at the presentation and the accompanying paperwork in our packet if they're interested, because it was very helpful. And I'd love to hear that Project Interface is working well. A long time ago, I worked on their website for them, but it was maybe 10 years ago or more. But at the time, Hopkinton wasn't using their services, and I'm glad it's working out. It's a great group of people.
Great. Thank you very much.
Very much.
So we're all set there. So Dawn, thank you again. And we are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is our Economic Development Office proposal. Finn Perry, Chair of the Growth Study Committee, will describe the proposal of the Growth Study Committee and for an Economic Development Office in town. Mr. Perry. And it says that Mr. Perry will request that Gary Trendell provide a planning board perspective on the request. So we can go ahead and liven up the mics of Mr. Perry and Mr. Trendell. Yeah, there's Finn.
Good evening. Yeah, is Gary on? He was going to
Yeah.
be.
He's on, he's just.
There
he's
he is. Very good. And I think also from the chamber, Tim Kilduff may be as well. But you'll see that.
You'd be a magician if you can get Tim Kilduff to speak. But by all means.
Might be an improvement. Anyway, thanks for.
Here he is.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead, Finn.
So thanks very much for inviting the Growth Study Committee to come before the Select Board this evening. There's Tim. And I want to quickly start by just expressing or answering a question that you may have having to do with the fact that the Growth Study Committee has been in business for 18 months or so. And the only thing that the Select Board and the public are hearing is the Growth Study Committee thinks we should have an economic development office. And why in heaven's name are we doing that? And not talking about some of the other issues having to do with growth. And the reality is that there's twofold. One is that we are doing other things, which we showed the town back last fall with our quite significant benchmarking study. But the other is that every time we look at any element of life, growth, and development in Hopkins, it has to do, economic development keeps coming up as a topic that needs some support. I won't say anything more about that at this point, but the other real reason that you're hearing this is because of the town meeting calendar. And last year, we wanted to bring an article to the town meeting, and the calendar required that we do that by the 1st of February. So we hustled and brought you an article at that point. And then ultimately, as because of the way things went, that got pulled. And then we came back this fall and had rethinking the situation and thinking that if we do economic development as a formal function of the town, that it should really fall within the town manager's purview and should be in his office, and his budget needed to be submitted or items to be put into his budget needed to be submitted by October 31st. So that's the reason that you've heard about it again from us this fall and why we're in front of you tonight, and I appreciate your patience with that. I have a brief presentation, which is no slides, just me talking. So we'll do that as quickly as possible. The purpose, obviously, for an economic development office is to call attention to the fact that Hopkinton is more than the bedroom community that a lot of us really think of it as. It's a growing and diverse residential community, largely defined by its rural self-image, its highly rated school system, and its family-oriented recreational offerings. We don't think of ourselves as particularly a business home to significant corporations, but we are home to divisions of 2 large global corporations, PerkinElmer and Dell EMC. But also, obviously, the several small local family businesses and everything in between. It's clear that businesses, both large and small, play a significant part in community vitality and the quality of life in Hopkinton. We all work somewhere, many of us in Hopkinton, and many of us have businesses in Hopkinton. So having a broad-based business presence in town ensures a robust inventory of well-paid jobs, along with a variety of services, shops, restaurants, and a yet-to-be-developed hotel and event venue. But 4 other points. Hopkinton's tax base is currently split 84% residential, 16% commercial and industrial. We should be concerned that this healthy ratio be maintained. It's actually significantly better than some of our competitor towns. And I think that's another thing that would come as a surprise to many residents in town. The second point is despite our relatively robust commercial industrial sector, our 495 industrial area is area-wise is small. It's confined to South Street and Elmwood Park. And a lot of that area is either underdeveloped or in some cases vacant. Much of the property was originally developed in the early 80s. The parcel that I owned at 90 Elm Street was all built about 1980. It was low density, relatively old space. And we've been through this whole business 10 years ago when I wanted to tear it all down and build something bigger. I was a little ahead of the curve, I think, on that. At number 3, our Golden Goose EMC is no longer a sure thing in town. We're now owned by a Dallas-based global corporation. Who knows where that ends up going? And finally, our real potential future Golden Goose, life science and biotech, everybody on 495 wants to pull biotech and life science into their town. So it's a competitive process and one that we really need to be players in that market. So what would an economic development office do rather specifically? And just as I go through this quickly, just ask yourself how many of these things you think we're actually doing now. Number 1, obviously, is to be Hopkins' ambassador to the outside world. Develop relationships with area-wide business development entities like the Chamber of Commerce, 495 Metro West Partnership, Massachusetts Office of Business Development, Massachusetts Biotech Council. I should note that Town Manager Norman Kamalo has just been appointed to the board of the Metro West Partnership, 495 Metro West Partnership, and this is a terrific opportunity for the town. Establish regular outreach and connection with Hopkins business, industrial, and commercial citizens. We have tremendous interaction with our residential citizens. I question whether we have the same kind of relationships with our commercial and industrial citizens. Assist the business community in its official dealings with various community boards, committees, permitting authorities. Develop relationships with regional commercial real estate brokers. Be aware of property searches in the area. Make sure the market is aware of opportunities and vacancies in Hopkinton. That's something that just is not happening. Open avenues of communication around what is important to business, what infrastructure, transportation, support services are appropriate, what commercial enterprises in the way of stores, restaurants, hotels, banking services are needed. How can we partner together to bring needed amenities for our business community, industrial zones into Hopkinton? And on the other side, assist the town leaders yourselves in developing relationships with Hopkins industrial citizens. Create a regular give and take leading to a more common understanding between business and governance. This just seems like something that if it's happening, it's way under the radar. Maintain a database of all commercial industrial properties in Hopkinton. Occupancy, square footage, lease rates, taxes, that just plain doesn't exist. Be a ready source of information on navigating licensing, permitting, and regulatory interactions. Assist in making appropriate connections. Ensure a regular and business-like linear application and permitting process. I give Mr. Trendle great credit with the planning board for having initiated just in the last couple of months, the whole notion of having a proposer with a development project come and talk to the planning department, land use department prior to bringing that idea to the board. That's a very big, I think, very positive step in the right direction. And this would just be more of that. Know what challenges are coming up and prepare the town when they occur. Like Liberty Mutual leaving town all of a sudden. Who knew about that? Attend local, regional, national business development and public policy conferences relevant to community interests. Spend time at the State House with our legislative delegation. Understand opportunities and challenges presented by various bills under consideration. Get used to testifying on Beacon Hill. become a presence in public policy advocacy on behalf of the 495 regional development. Work with our own zoning advisory committee and the land use department to bring forward innovative zoning and permitting opportunities which could attract appropriate industries and amenities needed to serve them. And I guess I should also add the TIF agreements, which Hopkinton has been really good at. Tax increment financing has been really good at using that particular tool to attract businesses. That's been a very positive thing that this town has been good at. And finally, two last things: coordinate a closer relationship between our best-in-class school department and our business community. Develop an internship program, for example, or a high school business curriculum, and other potential business partnerships, further integrating our businesses into the fabric of community life. You can remember back in the 90s when Richard Egan was at the top of EMC Corporation, and the relationship he had with Dr. Hosmer in the school department there was a real strong school department business partnership in those days. And finally, help to develop town to business partnerships with entities like the Hopkinton Center for Arts, or perhaps even the Fruit Street Fields. Just ask yourselves, how many of these things are we doing now? And whether you don't think it isn't something that we should start to add to the role of the town government. I will say that our growth study committee is a subset, it's a subcommittee of the planning board. And as such, we have a very small platform upon which to stand. And with that in mind, we took this proposal to the Chamber of Commerce, which is in just wrapping up a 10-year memorandum of understanding agreement with the select board to take on the role of economic development officer for the community. And we took it to their economic development committee, which supported us unanimously, and from there to the full board of the chamber, which expressed their support. And following that, we met as a subcommittee reporting to the planning board on November 30th, and a vote was taken at that time by the planning board, again unanimously, to support the concept. And I think what we're bringing you is not a specific, we have a specific proposal, but I think at this point, it probably makes more sense to, as the budget is really fairly well established, to really talk about it as a concept that something that the town should be thinking about moving forward. And with that, I will stop and see if you had some questions or comments.
Thank you, Finn. Board members, Irfan?
Thank you, Finn. I think that was a fantastic presentation. I guess what I'm curious about is you said there's a lot of things that have, are not going on. What do we need to do to get it moving?
Well, our specific proposal was that we try a one-year contract employee so that you would avoid the labor on that, the burden rather on that cost at somewhere in the $80,000 cost range with maybe some incentives. See if we can attract a person of that with the appropriate skill set, maybe with a focus on biotech, who would come work for a year and see what we could do. Because I think people are skeptical and it's appropriate. Why do we need this? We're doing fine. In many ways we're doing fine, but in many ways we're not. And as you can see from the list that we recited, that there's quite a bit more that could be done. And it's just, so our specific proposal is that we hire a individual contractor, work for a year in partnership with Norman and Elaine and see what we could do. And at the end of that year, we'd evaluate it and If it looked like it was working out, move forward.
I mean, that sounds great. And I do recall the meeting where, I think the appropriate phrase was a hunter needs to hunt. If you get someone in here and let them go to it, that's what they need to do. So I think things kind of fell apart with the COVID situation, but I think in order to grow the community, it does make a lot of sense to get someone in here who specializes in these things, as opposed to farming out pieces to the various committees throughout town.
Thanks, Irfan. Brian?
I would just kind of add to what Irfan was just saying there. A lot of what Finney talked about, and nice to see you. Hi, Finn. Haven't seen you in a while. A lot of what you talked about does go on. It goes on a little bit randomly. And one year it's this group that's kind of doing whatever it is you talked about. And the next year it's another group doing it. And the next year it's Mr. Kamala's office doing it. And it sort of meanders throughout our organization. It would be nice to have that all coordinated and coalesced under one umbrella, I think. And I think it would be more effective too. My only concern would be the timing of it. I'm very active in the commercial real estate world with what I do for a living, and interact with all kinds of different individuals and corporations that have real estate, whether it be land or roofs. I won't use the S word here because I'll have to be banned, but the markets are really tough right now, as you know, and the movement amongst the various industries in and out of commercial real estate properties all over the state, all over the country it's almost bizarre right now what's happening. In some cases, it's bizarre what's not happening.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get a pulse on where the commercial real estate market's going, and it's hard to get a pulse on sort of how long this recalibration of sorts is going to take. And I guess that would be my only concern with increasing our costs at this time is the market stable enough to make an actual difference in the economic activity on the commercial side of the ledger. I think a lot of the things that you touched on in coordination with the various boards and committees and getting with the schools and a lot of that facilitation type work, I think we could have an immediate impact. But I think where the ROI comes for the community is in what happens to the tax base over a period of time. And that's the piece that I would have a hard time getting my head around right now. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, and I know you're just here tonight, really kind of formally presenting. But that would be the piece that would be of concern to me sitting here today.
If I could just quickly respond to that, two things. One is where we really, I think as a town can have the biggest impact is by trying to attract the segment of the life science and biotech industry that is really looking for manufacturing facilities. That is a definite trend that's not, there's no argument about that. The real difficulty there is finding the employees who can actually staff those facilities once they get going. But that's where the market's really headed. And if I had something else to say, I forgot what it was.
We'll come back to you.
But
That happens to all of us.
I think that's the point. And so just having somebody who can focus on that heavily, I think is what really needs to happen. So thanks, Brian.
Great, thanks. Mary Jo. You're on mute.
Hi, okay, I'm not muted anymore. I think that this is a great suggestion. I know that the town of Franklin got themselves an economic development person maybe 10 years ago, and it worked out for them. I know the county of Norfolk had one, and the town of Medway has an economic development office, and they've done marvelous work for the town. And I think Natick had one too, at least for a while. Maybe it was temporary. my only concern is that I am worried about big business, but I'm also worried about the downtown. And I think that maybe as we go on with the downtown project, we may need more assistance in economic development as the shops and the stores in downtown go through their transition and have a problem. And I'd like to know how you feel about that. Ben?
A question for me, I absolutely agree. I know that you have Michelle Murdoch working with the businesses, and as a sort of a public relations person, she's the co-chair of our committee, which is terrific. So something is being done there. But then, you know, there are all sorts of things that one could think about with respect to downtown. I mean, it's just, for example, there's the Business Improvement District tool that's available and through the Department of Housing and Community Development, where you could get a group, say, of businesses downtown, if there was somebody to coordinate them, when such a group would form this business improvement district. And the effect of that is it's going to sound negative, but the effect of that is that you agree to tax yourselves a little extra on top of the regular taxes, and those funds that are raised in that fashion then can be used specifically for business improvement projects right in that downtown area. Now that's a complicated program, but it's one that could be looked into and sold and may help some of the local businesses to do better.
Thanks. Amy?
Yeah, I want to thank Finn for bringing this to us. I was thinking, especially during the time of COVID, the office space needs are changing drastically, like throughout the country, as well as in Hopkinton, in South Street with EMC and companies like that. And that it would really be, we need to really be able to adapt and change. And if people need half as much office space as they used to, we need to be bringing in different types of businesses that have different needs, perhaps. And I think this could really help with that. I think it could also help with the downtown. We're going to be going through a big change over the next 2 years with the corridor project. And I think I think people would like the downtown to be more revitalized. We've had committees for that over the years. And then having a dedicated person, I think, could really help. And one thing, also, we brought this up last fall before COVID at 2 of our forums we had at the high school and the senior center. And we kind of floated this idea with the residents. And I was really surprised that most residents we spoke to, even if they were on fixed incomes, seemed to think that this might be a good idea and they would be happy to have more amenities downtown and on South Street. So I think there's a great benefit. And they didn't seem to be too scared away by the fact that there would be an initial cost to it. That's the thing that I know in this budget year, it's tough whether we can do it or not, but I think there is value in it.
Great. Thanks, Amy. So me being the protagonist, I guess, or antagonist, with COVID comes our hiring freeze and everything that goes along. That there are positions in the police department that haven't been backfilled because we just don't have the money. So, $70,000 or $80,000 could be a teacher, could be a police officer, could be an economic development officer, could be lots of things. I'm not saying that we don't need something like that. Anything that we could ever do to bring people in and showcase our town, local, state, and nationally, I would be not doing my job if I didn't say that I would look at it with open ears, and I will. I'll look at it with open ears and open eyes. And but right now with our hiring freeze, I don't know if we could justify trying to sneak an economic development person in when we do have a lot of positions that have gone not backfilled. So, but that's just my 2 cents. I'm one guy on the board. But did you have something, Finn? No. All right. So thank you very much, Finn. Appreciate the time and all the effort you did to put this together. What else we got? So I guess moving on, we will go to Mr. Kamalo, the 2021 Annual Town Meeting FY22 Budget Update. The Select Board will discuss the 2021 Annual Town Meeting and hear the FY22 budget updates. The board has a list of potential warrant articles for submission in the meeting packet. The warrant closes on February 2. Mr. Kamalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start off with the annual town meeting warrant. As you know, the warrant is open and it is closing on February 3rd. And thus tonight we are coming before you so that you could confirm the articles that we can post and include in the draft warrant. We provided a list of those articles in the meeting packet, and perhaps for the convenience of the listening public, I will mention the 5 that are potential or prospective articles that have been discussed before, but for the sake of the public's information, there's the new trench safety officer bylaw, the new street opening permit bylaw, proposed amendment to dog licensing bylaw to comply with state statute, referencing fine for failure to license dogs. Number 4, amendments to streets and sidewalks and vehicles and traffic bylaws. And then there's the transfer from General Stabilization Fund. This weekend, I also shared with you a concern that staff has been discussing with some neighbors or residents in town for the past year regarding the discharge of firearms in residential areas. My suggestion is that the board consider including that article for now, with the option of having future discussions. And if there's a need to keep it on the warrant, that would be okay for the board. And the board may also decide to remove it from the warrant. However, to be able to make the February 3rd deadline, that decision needs to be made today. And then we also provided the list of the recurring articles. Acceptance of town reports, last fiscal year supplemental appropriation and transfer, unpaid bills from previous fiscal years, excess bond premium, set the salary of elected officials, current fiscal year operating budget, revolving fund, spending limits, Chapter 90 highway funds, transfer to post-employment benefits liability trust fund, transfer to the General Stabilization Fund, transfer to capital expense stabilization fund, pay as you go, and then capital projects that are not funded through pay as you go. That's the universe of articles that we're proposing to include in the draft town meeting warrant.
Thank you. Mr. Kamalo, is it appropriate to discuss that potential article that you brought up about the townspeople? Is that something we should talk about today, or should we put that on the agenda another time or speak about it offline?
Yeah, what I'm looking for from the board is simply a consensus as to whether I should include it on the warrant. The specifics and the details can be discussed at a future meeting.
So, yeah, so, okay. So just because we put it on there doesn't mean that we're going to leave it there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's any harm in putting it on there. Do you?
I don't see any harm. Again, it's simply an administrative maneuver considering the deadline.
Right. So it's just a placeholder, and we can pull it if we need it. So,
yeah.
Board
Mr.
members, any? Yes, sir.
Mr. Kamalo, on the discharge of firearms, if we're putting a placeholder there, is the mechanism of whatever we're going to do is still out in the open, or like what does our placeholder say that we're going to introduce an article on the discharge of firearms in residential neighborhoods?
That's the title that will be listed, correct?
Okay, and then we can kind of flesh it out at a future meeting.
Yes, as to whether the board wants to proceed or not. Again, we as staff have had conversations with the residents who have raised this concern. We do have a draft article that we had forwarded to them that they could move forward. However, given what I shared with you over the weekend, I'm now presenting this request before the board.
Well, thank you. I mean, I had brought this up at a previous board meeting, just about hearing gunshots while sitting on my patio. It's not very comforting to hear when you're out there, but what I'm concerned about is exactly what we're going to do about it. So I'm fine with keeping a placeholder and figuring out what we're going to do about it.
Mr. Kamalo, are the distances and times, those aren't set by us as a town, those are set by the state, correct? For example, if the state says that there's no discharging of a shotgun within 500 feet of a house, and someone builds a development 300 feet from the gun club, and then after they buy their house 300 feet from the gun club, they say that they're out of compliance and they have to shut down their gun club. I have very mixed feelings. I mean, obviously, I'm sympathetic to everybody in the town that moves into town, and a good realtor would probably disclose to somebody that they're 800 yards through the woods to the gun club, or a gun club that has these clubs that do hunting and target shooting and whatnot, and have been here for years. And then when the leaves fall and it's there's not as much sound deadening matter on the trees, that they start hearing it more. To me, it's a shady practice by whoever's selling their house, or be it a realtor or a homeowner or whomever, for not disclosing it. And I don't want to take that out on the existing businesses and the people that have land that allows hunting and whatnot. So that's why I asked if this is the appropriate place to discuss this, or if we should do some legwork prior to this.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, a very good question. In fact, to be clear, the bylaw or prospective bylaw that we are discussing now will not affect permitted gun clubs. The concern expressed is with respect to private discharging firearms on private property that is within X distance from residential areas. To your earlier question, the state law regulates the distances, as well as the hours of operation of gun clubs. But again, this particular discussion is not focusing on gun clubs.
If it is change what the state has deemed as appropriations from dwellings and homes, hunting, which have been deemed safe. And I'm not a hunter, but I can tell you that with all the development that's gone on in town, it has displaced a massive amount of wildlife. And over the last 5 years, I've seen a heck of a lot more coyotes in my backyard than I have prior to the building out of legacy farms and some of these other places that were laden in wildlife. And it's cute to see deer running across your yard here and there, but the last thing I want to do is see 3 coyotes, which, by next spring will be 9 coyotes, which will be 40 coyotes. And then all of a sudden, left in the
Brendan, you're breaking up big time.
I thought that was my internet connection.
All right. So it's the town's iPad. We need to spend more money on our upgrades. So so I guess why don't we table? Yeah, we'll put a placeholder on it. We can discuss, and we can pull it if we need be. But so I guess I will entertain a motion to put a placeholder for the discharge of firearms article that Mr. Kamalu spoke of on the town warrant.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Mr. Lafreniere?
Ferner, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush?
Rhoda yes.
Headstone, yes. All right. Mr. Kamala, what else you have?
Oh,
Yeah,
I did have
let's-
one more on that topic. Sorry.
Go ahead, Amy.
I just heard about this. I apologize. This week, but apparently, the Zoning Advisory Committee has been discussing that a lot of towns have a tree cutting bylaw, which is not actually a zoning bylaw; it's a general bylaw. And I didn't know if that's something we might want to put on as a placeholder because it would be a general bylaw. And I realize that putting it as a placeholder, we can remove it later if people don't agree with it. But so we could. I don't know if anyone watched the Zoning Advisory Committee meeting last time, but. Yeah.
I did not. So this is the first I've heard of
Right.
anything like that. So I am, I don't know. Mr. Kamala, do you know anything about this?
I'm not familiar with the details. I've heard in general terms.
All right. So I don't know. It seems pretty vague. Tree cutting bylaw. I don't know. Board members, what do you think?
Ms. Ritterbush, can you expand on that a little bit? Just so give a little more context.
Yeah, it's see, I'm sorry, I don't have a great amount of detail on it, and I'm sorry it came up kind of late. So, is it too late to research it for next week? We have one more meeting in January, right?
I don't think that we do we?
Yeah.
We do.
We do?
I think it would be, most towns have a parameters for when you can clear cut land and the setbacks and everything. If you're just for clear cutting, not necessarily when you're getting a permit to build something. And it's protection for trees and forests that we don't currently have. I think usually they, if I understood it correctly, that a common requirement would be that you keep 30% of the trees on a given lot. And a lot of our, anyway, I'm sorry, I really wish I had more detail, but I just found out about it this week.
Yeah, I don't feel too comfortable kind of putting a placeholder on it without having more information. And I would hate to have somebody come and tell me that I could only cut X amount of trees, so my kids couldn't have a wiffle ball field or a place to play kickball. But yeah, if you want to do a little research and bring it to our next meeting, feel free to do that.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Kamala, is that right or was that wrong?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So is that it for the town meeting and budget update?
Yeah, that's on annual town meeting. One last piece. We are proposing a public hearing where the board will present, discuss, and receive input on the suggested bylaws for February 23rd.
Okay.
Okay.
Not school vacation week, is it?
February 23rd.
I
No.
believe that's right after school vacation, isn't it? It's the week of.
Yep, it's not school vacation week. Okay, that's good.
No, it's 14th. It's the week of the 14th is vacation week, I think.
I think most families are planning on taking a vacation from their living room down to the basement.
Yeah. Okay, moving
All
on.
right, go ahead, Mr. Kamalo. Let's sum it up.
Yes,
You're running me behind.
Yeah. A budget update very quickly. I'm going to convey two pieces of information to the board. One, quickly on where we are on the budget process, and then also speak very briefly about the process. The budget meetings at staff level are continuing, including also the meetings of the budget advisory group. In terms of our preparation, I just want to remind the board that you directed the town manager to develop plans within both the 2.5% tax impact limit and the 1.1% tax impact limit. And responsive plans will be issued, as I've said before, January 26th. As of today, the request for uses of funds exceeds the projected sources of funds by a material amount with a tax levy producing 2.5% tax impact. And when we bring that down to the 1% tax impact, that number goes up by another $1 million. For now, the following options could be considered. Non-property tax revenue could rise, additional cuts not to requested spending, and then capital spending could be scaled back or eliminated, or general funds and or school stabilization reserves could be utilized, or alternatively, the board can accept a higher tax impact. As in past years, I believe that an informed decision based on a review of these options will be made through a deliberate, transparent, and inclusive process. As a reminder, this budget process just began, and therefore we're going to be busy leading to town meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, Mr. Khumalo. I agree with you.
Yeah, and then in terms of our schedule, I need to remind the board what I've been saying for years. We have between 6 and 9 days to compile the comprehensive budget. For you to get it on the 26th, that's the time limit that we have. And this is the same time we're working on the annual town meeting warrant. The pace is crazy, it is hectic, and the pressure that I need to put on our finance team is very intense. Against that background, our high expectations that we will consult in a cyclical form and that we will be producing quality information that is fact-checked and posted online for the benefit of our public is very difficult to meet. I've been here for 10, 11 years. I'm the last person to say this work is difficult. I just want to share with you that we're plowing along. We will keep moving forward, but I want everybody to notice that we can't keep doing this to ourselves.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Khumalo. And moving, are you all set? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it on the annual town meeting and the budget process.
Okay. So why don't you give us the, sorry, let me cover my mouth. My mother taught me better than that.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us the town manager report, Mr. Khumalo?
Yeah, very quickly, in a celebratory tone, I'm reporting to the public that the pre-construction meeting for the Main Street Corridor project did take place. There were 3 key takes from that meeting. Number one, we had for the first time the schedule for the project. Construction is beginning as soon as January 19th. And also, as part of that schedule, it was explained to us that the contractor is looking at the project in terms of 2 geographic phases. The first phase is from the common all the way coming down to the traffic intersection. The idea is to at least complete this phase within the 1-year window, which I believe would be very good for our businesses. Within that same 1-year window, the idea is to do all the base work from the intersection to Wood Street, which therefore leaves the second year of the project to doing and moving, finalizing moving poles and completing the undergrounding projects. This was a very welcome development, hearing that the contractor is going to be pursuing this very aggressive schedule, which will have a minimal impact in terms of duration to the corridor. The other piece that we also had is that the project does agree with the town that it is necessary to invest strongly on public communication. And to that end, we have a private entity that is coming. It's called City Point. The company is called City Point Partners. They will be working alongside VHB, Mass DOT, the contractor, and the town to make sure that the communication is complete relative to the construction activities.
Yeah, I think that that's very important, Mr. Kamalo. As a selectman and as someone that's been here for a while, I have rapport with many businesses along Main Street. And as you and I have had more than a couple of conversations, once in a while, the communication isn't great where a business is adversely affected by a construction project that starts up. As much as I love having relationships with many people in town, I don't love having the 8 o'clock at night screaming phone call that my business was down 70% to what it was this time yesterday, and no one told me, but it was planned. So it's very important to get the news out to the business owners as well as to the townspeople. And I guess I was able to drive through town the other morning, very early, where there was not a lot of traffic. So I was able to go the speed limit. Even during the construction of the Main Street Corridor project, I don't think the road can be in any worse repair. So I'm looking forward to have this whole thing torn up and done and fixed right. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. And is that it, Mr. Kamalo, on the town manager report? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it from me.
Good. Liaison reports. Board members have any liaison reports?
Yeah, I was invited to the Sandy Beach part of the Parks and Rec meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they have it's hard to talk about Sandy Beach at this time of year, but they've got some good plans on how the beach is to be utilized this summer. Of course, COVID impacts everything, but they're working very hard and they've got some terrific ideas, and they really are. It really is Sandy Beach Park is what they brought out too, because they do have a parking lot and a boat ramp and a playground along with the beach. So it's going to be utilized, and I think that they're making really good progress on how it's going to be utilized this coming summer. And I think that's all I'm going to report right now. They have to report back to Parks and Rec. So
Good.
That's my report.
Thank you. Mr. Nasrullah.
Yeah, quick one from the Upper Charles Trail Committee. The work on the campus trail connector is moving along. They're hoping to have a scope of work for the grant by the end of June. They've done a wetland delineation, and VHP has a couple ideas as to where the trail will go.
Good. Ms. Ritterbusch?
I had actually a couple of questions on the town manager's report. How much did you say the budget gap is at the moment between the needs and requests compared to the 2.5%?
Yeah, I didn't
approximately.
Yeah, through the chair. I didn't specify a number in terms of that relative to the 2.5%. It's roughly 2 million. However, if you bring the budget down to the 1% tax impact level, that number goes up by another 1 million.
Okay, that just gives us a good frame of reference. And then I really agreed with what Mr. Tedstone said about the downtown corridor communication. And I noticed that in the memo you said that you're communicating, I think it was monthly, with the Chamber of Commerce, which is great. But a lot of the businesses in the downtown are not necessarily members of Chamber of Commerce, and the residents certainly are not. What steps are going to be taken, or I guess just think about this, to get them all on some kind of email or announcement list proactively, because they're going to be so highly impacted compared to the rest of the town?
Yeah, in fact, in our communications with the Chamber of Commerce, we go beyond businesses. At our last meeting this past Friday, we did talk about how to reach out to all the abutters. We do have the emails, we do have some of the phone numbers, and we are looking at a process that will allow people to even subscribe to the project.
That's great. That's all I have.
All right, and then I had the open space had a meeting, but I was unable to make that meeting due to some full-time job requirements with this COVID stuff. So I have nothing. So that being said, Mr. Nasrullah, why don't you hit me with my favorite article of the night?
Before, I think we have the future agenda items that we may have moved.
Yeah,
I have no future agenda items, but I just wanted to make sure we stayed on
I was
track.
talking about adjourning. I didn't skip a line on my agenda. I'm sorry. I have no future agenda items. Irfan, you have none. Brian, you have none. Mary Jo or Ms. Ritterbush?
Well, in that case, sir, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you feel about that?
I feel really warm and fuzzy inside, and I vote yes.
Keep at a reasonable socially distance responsibly. Mr. Hurd,
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere,
Frenia, yes.
Ms. Ritterbush,
Ritterbush, yes.
Redstone, yes. If you can hear that in the background, my daughter's making whipped cream, so I'm going to have something with whipped cream on it. See you later.
Awesome.
Enjoy.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.